this? Hello, can you hear me? Okay. Maybe sharing. Maybe sharing this. Let me go pee real quick. Hi. Hi. Wait, that means that's all. I have to pee and then I start. No, because I start in like 4 minutes. About to go pee.
There's a poop?
Pee.
Hey, Max.
Do you want bubble tea?
Sure. Wait, are you going out now?
No, I'm gonna go later.
Oh, yeah.
I was actually gonna go like when I was thinking of food, but I wasn't sure if you were gonna go.
I'll come back out to eat if I have time, but it looks amazing. I wish I could eat. Okay.
Did you eat something before?
Yeah.
What'd you eat?
Sorry, I have to get started now.
What'd you eat?
Food.
You concern me so much.
Hi, Renox.
Hey.
How's it going?
Going good.
All right. I have it all set. We are waiting, and yeah.
Now we play the waiting game.
Now we play the waiting game. All right. Yeah, sorry. My last meeting ran a little bit late, so I joined with around like 5:52. Hello, bot.
You're good.
What's up?
What's up?
Hey.
How's it going, gamers? What's up, Renox?
It's going good. We're hoping that people are going to be hopping into the TFT class soon.
Yeah, that is the plan. We have 42 Gym Pro members now.
Yep.
So that's a pretty decent amount. I think last week we only had like 30 or 40. So
wait. We have 70.
Oh.
Yeah, he means Gym Pro. Just the pro
Yeah.
members.
Yeah, we have
70 pro
70.
members?
Oh, I guess.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, it doesn't show
68.
offline.
68
yeah,
pro members.
Yeah. There's
2
people
academies.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's
2 academy?
only 2?
2?
Yep.
Well, holy.
Well, that's good then. Good job, marketing team. Okay.
Well, I guess we'll just give it a couple minutes.
Yeah.
I'm unironically here to learn.
Okay, awesome.
I honestly could learn too. Honestly, like I'm pretty garbage at TFT, so I could learn a thing or two.
Yeah, Bach, I see you've been popping off with the seconds, huh?
Yeah, I can't come in first. It's just impossible.
Don't worry. After this, all you'll be going is 1-1-1-1-1 in your games.
No, I doubt that, dude. I'm still learning this set, and which is funny because they just patched things pretty majorly, right?
Yeah, today had is the biggest patch of the season. So essentially,
LOL.
At the end of each set, they just kind of do a for fun patch. So then today's patch was huge. Like I think 30 things got buffed, and numbers are just skewed, and they're just letting people have fun. Hello, Zengis. How you been?
Yeah. Like if you wanted like this is my most recent game, posting this in, I don't actually know, Masterclass. Where do I post this at, dude?
There's a Masterclass.
Oh wait, check this out. Check this out. Hold up. Permissions. Huh? Hold up. Hold up.
Holding.
What's happening?
I'm holding. Any holder uppers? Why couldn't I do this before? This game sucks. Look at this. Each voice chat has its own text chat now. I don't know if you guys noticed that.
Oh yeah, that's a beta feature. I don't know who enabled it, but someone did.
Yeah, that was pretty neat.
You like my built different third place because this game sucks? How do I win, Max? Teach me.
How do I win? Great question. Okay, so should we get started then? It is 6:01.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you can get started.
Sure.
More people will be funneling in, I'm sure.
Okay. So, hello everyone. Welcome to the second week of the TG Gym, TFT Day. Today we're going to start off with our masterclass as usual, and today's topic is going to be about early game itemization. So just a quick reminder going into this, if you have any questions, feel free to either unmute your mic and ask. You can also post in the masterclass text channel. I see Bach and Zengis have sent some messages, so that's perfect. And yeah, at the very end we'll have a feedback session, but don't worry about that. We're just going to hop right into it. Okay, so today, early game itemization, we're going to be talking mainly about stage 1 and stage 2. And so here's our table of contents for early game. We're going to go with a quick introduction into this topic. Once again, we're going to talk about stage 1 and stage 2 early game. We're going to talk about natural items, what they are, how to get them, how do they affect your game. We're going to talk about how augments and units affect your itemization. We're going to have a little bit of practice, and then we're going to end off with a reflection and a little bit of a Q&A. Alright, so introduction to itemization. Let's get it started. So what is itemization? Well, we have item components, right? And creating an item involves combining two item components. And what do these items do? They strengthen your units, which strengthen your overall board. Now there's two, I guess, main classifications of itemization. There's best in slot items, which is essentially the best combination of items for your carry or your units, and then there's also slamming items, and we'll talk about slamming items in a second. Within best in slot items, these can involve offensive, defensive, and utility items. Okay, so let's talk about best in slot items. It's abbreviated BIS, so if you hear that anywhere, this is what they're talking about. This is essentially S+ tier items, or the best combination of items for a unit. This can be hard to acquire because it is pretty specific items, and you will not always be dropped to these items. They maximize a unit's potential by giving them an opportunity to be the best that unit can be. And the last part is it doesn't always have to be 3 completed items in order to be best in slot. Some units only require 1 or 2 specific items, and they are already in their BIS or their best in slot items. Okay, so let's go over a couple examples. We have 3 champs here. Maybe other people can name a couple more too. We have Renata. So best in slot for Renata would be Blue Buff, Gunblade, Morello. A couple others, let's talk about some AD champions like Jin. We have Last Whisper, Infinity Edge, and Giant Slayer. And then Sivir is one of those examples where I stated you don't necessarily need 3 full items. So best in slot Sivir is Last Whisper and Rageblade +1. And this +1 can be pretty situational. It can either be a Quicksilver Sash if you need to avoid CC. It can also be an Infinity Edge if you're CC safe and you just need more damage. And quick image on the right here, we have all of the items present in set 6.5. Plenty of items, and it's super important to know which ones will benefit your board and which one is most optimal and which ones are not ideal. Okay, let's keep going here. Oh, Zengis is typing. Swain best in slot items are weird. Yeah, so Swain is definitely an interesting unit. Right now in the meta, he is no longer a viable carry. There used to be a Swain carry meta where you go 3-star Swain with Yordles, and that was Rabadon's Death Cap, Quicksilver Sash, and +1. I think it was Ionic Spark. But now, unfortunately, he is not strong enough, just statistics-wise and like his stats, and we should not be placing items on Swain for the time being. Okay, so let's talk about a couple of items. So we have offensive items, right? What do? They amplify a carry's damage. So carries already do damage, right? But having items, they will now amplify and multiply this carry's damage to deal damage. And these will be your main damage source of a board. Some example of these are Giant Slayer, Infinity Edge, and Rabadon's Death Cap. Does anyone have any examples of what more offensive items can be? And just remember, you can either unmute your mic and talk, or you can also type in the Masterclass text channel.
Would something like Hodge be an offensive item, or?
Yeah, so Hodge is definitely an offensive item and is really good too. So Hodge, Hand of Justice, is actually surprisingly really good, very good early game on stage 2. I was talking with Gubums, who recently just went third in the TFT version of World Finals for North America, and he was telling me that Hodge is really good early because of the raw stat it gives, which is a little interesting because I always thought of Hodge as a multiplicative item because it can enhance your damage by 40%. So if you already have damage and then 40% enhanced is even more damage. But apparently it's also really good early. So yes, good answer. Definitely an offensive item. Deathblade, yes. Zangief's Deathblade is also a really good offensive item. And yeah, so offensive items, super important. You 100% need them on your board in order to kill units. And let's move on to defensive items. So this works hand in hand with offensive. Just like in League, if you guys play League, you need a defense or a front line in order for your back line to do damage. So defensive items, they delay enemy carries from reaching your ally carries. And this essentially enables your ally carries to deal damage. Some example of these are Warmogs, Bramblevis, and Dragon's Claw. And these are the main 3 defensive items. Does anyone have any other items that they think would be considered defensive?
Like ZZ route?
Yeah, so ZZ Rot technically it falls, it's a little odd. So ZZ Rot I would classify as defensive / utility just because it has a taunt, but still is definitely a defensive item. It stalls them and pops out a little, what are they called, like a little void minion to stall time. So yeah, ZZ Rot is definitely an offensive item here.
Okay, wait. Question. Titan's Resolve, where does that fit in?
Okay, so Titan Resolve I would say is it's both an offensive and defensive, but it's mostly an offensive item. Just because when it's fully popped, it does give armor and magic resist, but you mainly like make that item for the offensive capabilities of the item. And this should always be on melee units because you get stacks from doing damage and taking damage. So Titan's Resolve on range carries doesn't get stacked up very fast just because they don't take a lot of damage during the fights till the very end when they're the last ones left, and at that point they're most likely dead if it's like just them remaining. So good question. I would categorize Titans as mainly offensive, like I would say like 90% offensive, and then the armor and magic resist it gives at the end is just a little bonus. Okay, so let's move on. So we talked about offensive and defensive. Now we talk about utility items. So these, along with defensive items, they allow your carry units to function. Basically, it just lets your carry units play the game. These can be either offensive or defensive. So some example of these can be Zeke's Herald and Banshee's Claw. So for example, Zeke's giving attack speed to the holder and 1 unit on each adjacent side. And then Banshee's is blocking an enemy ability by the holder and for each unit on its adjacent sides. So this is the Zeke's would be offensive and the Banshees would be defensive. Is there any other utility items that one might think of here?
Yeah, like Zephyr and Shroud.
Yeah, so Zephyr and Shroud, definitely utility items is good. They're super good and they will definitely help your units function in a round. All right, so here's another slide. We're going to be talking about how the item stats are multiplicative and some synergies for items. So some multiplicative stats, health and armor, health plus armor / MR. So what this means is that a combination of these together will benefit a unit more than just an excess amount of one of these stats. So if you have health and armor, they work super well, as opposed to just having health. And this also applies for attack damage and crit damage. because the more AD you have, the more your crits will do. So this is multiplicative, and what I mean by this is you should always be placing, stacking items on a unit. So it's not as effective to put like one item on everyone, unless you have like cybernetic augment. It's more effective to stack your items and put like, okay, Infinity Edge plus Deathblade plus Last Whisper all on one carry, so all the stats are multiplicative. The items synergize together, like in the lower point here, Last Whisper plus Infinity Edge, and this makes one really strong carry as opposed to like 5 medium to weak carries. One last synergy at the bottom here is Rageblade plus Zeke's Harmony. This is just an example of items that synergize together and would work out very well for your board. Okay, does anyone have any examples of another item synergy combo that would work well together?
Could you do like Ginsu's and Shojin, or is that?
Yeah, so Ginsu's and Shojin, it's pretty interesting. It does work well together because yeah, you get infinite attack speed stacking, and then each attack gives you bonus mana from the Shojin. And honestly, this would work, I think now in today's like patch with like Caitlyn carry.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, on units that have like a large mana pool where you need that Shojin, and then it will just infinitely stack with the Ginsu's, and this combination does work super well. You get a lot of casts, but this synergy should only be placed on units that have a lot of base damage already. Just because the Ginsu's and the Shojin, they don't give your unit more damage, they just allow your unit to cast more often. So yeah, that's a good combo. Thank you, Bach. And now we can move on. So one of our last parts of introductory to itemization is finishing non-ideal components. This is also called like finishing item components or like killing item components. Essentially, is when you're playing a comp and you're given an item component that doesn't fit great. So for example, let's look at an AD comp, right? Let's say you're playing Sivir, okay, and you're given a tier. The static Shiv Sivir Hex Tech is over now, and mostly tiers are for AP comps, right? You can make Shojin, you can make Archangels, you can make Blue Buff. Tiers are mainly for AP comps. So if you have an AD comp, you need to somehow get rid of this tier and make it most optimal for your team. So you would need to either make a Hand of Justice or a Frozen Heart, just because the other options are not as good. Same thing with a Rod. If you're playing an AD comp and you're given an AP item, you need to be making either Ginsu's Rageblade or Locket, just because the other options are geared more towards AP comps than AD comps. And this is called finishing item components. This reverse works for AP comps as well. So let's say you're playing AP, right? And you're given a bow, which is attack speed. You're like, okay, well, my units, they mostly need to cast and do AP damage rather than attack quickly. So you would want to be killing this bow or finishing this bow by making it into either a Giant Slayer, a ZZ Raw, or a Static Shiv. And if you're given a sword, you want to make this into either Giant Slayer, Shojin, Zeke's, or if you're playing Kaisa, you can make Edge Knight. So this is basically just, if you're playing a comp and you're given an item component that doesn't fit really well, you need to be able to still make the most optimal item combination that still fits with your comp and will finish off that component. Alright, so that's a quick introductory into items. Now we're going to look at the early game itemization as the topic of this masterclass. So stage 1, starting Carousel. We have 3 different tiers of items. So I hear all the time, Max, what item should I start in the Carousel right now? I don't know what's good. I don't really take like Glove, is that good? Here is my opinion on well, not even my opinion, this is just fact of what is good starting Carousel items. So A tier, we have Recurve Bow, we have Sword, we have Tier, and we have Glove. These are the most flexible items. They make a lot of items that are really good in today's meta and really good with today's like units and compositions. So if you see one of these, definitely go for it. I normally go for bow because I think bow is easier to win streak early. Tier is also easier to win streak early. In B tier, we have belt, chain, and rod. And here's the reasoning why. So belt and chain are defensive items, right? Defensive / utility. You can make Warmogs, you can make Bramble, you make Frozen Heart, and don't get me wrong, these items are good, but they're only good if you have a damage item behind it. And early game, you can only have normally around 3 item components. So you can't have a defensive item plus a offensive item unless you have a item augment. So that's why this is good. I put it in B tier. And then for rod, unless you're playing AP, rod would only go into Rageblade or Morello. So you don't need rod for that many things. That's why it's in B tier. You normally only need 1. Then C tier is cloak. Cloak right now in today's meta is not really good, and you want to avoid this item on your starting carousel at all costs. Okay, let's keep going. So stage 1 loot drop options. So now you've gone through your carousel. Let's say you're given a bow. Great, awesome. Now you're in your minion round and you're trying to see like, okay, what can I get? Okay, so your first option is if you get 2 item components and gold. So at this point, you'll have 3 total item components, and on stage 2, you can now slam an item and have a leftover component. Okay, this is good, this is standard. You make a full item, and you can try to win streak. Your second option is if you get only 1 item component and a gold start. So this means that now you only have 2 item components, but you have a ton of gold. So what you can do is you can greed for best in slot if you want, just because slamming 1 item is still good, but you're 1 item component behind everyone else, which means that your board is not going to be that strong. You might as well just try to lose streak early and make as much gold as possible, because you'll have more gold than everyone else, but you'll be down 1 item component. So you don't need to slam an item. You could greed for best in slot, and that is from 1 item component and a gold start. So these are your stage 1 loot drop options. Okay. There's also a couple outliers, like if you get a Nico's help, you could get -1 gold and get like a remover instead. Those are small changes that can happen as well, but these are the 2 main options for stage 1 loot drops and what you should do. Okay, so let's look at an example here. I'm just on stage 1, and you can just see me playing it out. I'll make this a little higher quality. Basically, so we're now on stage 1-4. So I have 2 item components. One is on the Caitlyn, and here I'm just looking to see if I'm either getting gold or if I'm going to get my 3rd item component. And when I mean gold, I mean only gold. So this would be like a blue orb, and this would give me like 6 gold, and then I can easily make 10 just by selling some units on my board. Or I'll be getting a 3rd item component, and then I could look for a 2-1 slam. So one tip that I will give just on stage 1, which seems a little funny because stage 1, there's not a lot you could do, right? Is I would be walking, you see my character? I'd be walking close to the minions. Now, the reason why I do this is because the timer of the round will end once the last person finishes the last minion. And then it'll pause for a second, like half a second, and it will immediately go to 2-1. So what I'm doing by walking around these minions is if this one drops like only gold, and now my entire bench is full, I want like an extra like half a second, even an extra second, to try to figure out, okay, what units do I want to keep, and what units can I sell to make 10 gold. So this just gives you an earlier way of like giving you a little bit extra time to decide what you want to do, as opposed to just staying at your default position near your items. So this is just stage 1. You normally get 3 item components, and then on stage 2-1 you can slam. Here I slam a Giant Slayer, and then I scrap a bow, and this is pretty common of how stage 1 will look. Okay, so that's stage 1. Let's move on to stage 2. So stage 2 common slams. The biggest 2 that I would say right now in today's meta, along with blue buff, is Sunfire Cape and Last Whisper. These are the most, like, 100%, if you get these items, you slam them on stage 2. They're strong early. Last Whisper will always be strong, and you do this, you'll probably have a really good chance of win streaking. Other item slams you could do on stage 2 are Bramble, Warmogs, some aura items such as Zeke's and Chalice, so those are considered aura items, Rabadon's Death Cap, and a Locket of Solari. Locket is a little bit on the fence. I would only do it if you have really nothing else to slam and if you have a 2-star unit, and that'll definitely strengthen your board early, but does not scale very well. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, and now you might be thinking, okay, what do I do with my 3rd item component, right? So normally you have 3 items, 3 item components. You'll combine 2 to make an item, and you'll be left with this 3rd one. So what you can do is you gotta either play scrap, and you put this 3rd item component on a scrap unit that already has your completed item. So now you'll have like quote unquote 2. And this is good because item stats are multiplicative, right? So let's say you have an Infinity Edge plus a bow. You could get a Ezreal, put in the Infinity Edge, put the bow, maybe it scraps into a Last Whisper, and now you have a Last Whisper, Infinity Edge, Ezreal, 80 carry early game, and they'll be really good. You can also save this 3rd component for a 4th item component from Carousel on 2-4, and then you can make 2 full items. Or you could also place it on a unit for the cybernetic augment value, and this is what you should do for your 3rd item component. Okay, now let's go over some scenarios here. So scenario 1, we're going to be looking at stage 2-1 items. Take a look at this picture here, and when you have an idea of what you would do with your items, feel free to unmute, type in the Masterclass chat. I want to hear everyone's opinion on what you would do with your items here. Okay, does anyone have any ideas? So we have a bow and we have 2 chains. Those make what, Titan's Resolve? Yeah, so a bow plus chain combination makes Titans, and then your only other option is to make Bramble Vest from the 2 chains. Okay, I'll give another 10-15 seconds if anyone is thinking.
Could you repeat that one more time? Sorry.
Yeah, so the question here is, what would you do with your items here? So you have a bow and you have 2 chain vests, and you're playing in AP comp, and you have 1 frontline unit and 3 backline units. So this is the very start.
You slam the Titan's Resolve, dude. Get it going, dude.
Slamming the Titan Resolve. And why do you think that?
I mean, you have Arcanist, Scholar, Kassadin's a melee champion. Titan's Resolve, you just said, is good on melee champions. You need to slam because you have 3 items. So, it's, yeah.
Okay, so half of your explanation there was correct. So yes, Kassadin is melee, and Titan Resolve is good on melee champions. However, that is my bad. I should have specified Titan Resolve is good on melee carries that will stay alive long enough to get the Titan's Resolve fully stacked. So Kassadin here, maybe if he was a Kassadin 2, then yeah, Titan Resolve is good. But in this scenario here, you have a strong backline, you have a Brand, you have a Syndra, and a Ziggs too. So your backline is strong, but your frontline is really weak. So what you want to do here is slam the Bramble Vest on Kassadin, and then you want to have your frontline survive as long as it can, so your backline can output damage. And then maybe on level 5, you can put another scrap unit and put a bow on Ziggs, and then now you'll have a scrapped bow on Ziggs. So here, you already have a strong backline, and you don't need any more damage. You just want to have more tank, so you gotta put the Bramble Vest on the Kassadin. Okay, let's look at another scenario here. Now we have a new board. So 2-1, we have 1 belt, we have 2 chains. We have a Leona, a Corky, a Poppy, and a Ziggs. So our damage isn't great. We have 2 bodyguard and 3 Yordle. Okay, so Zangief says Sunfire. Okay, Sunfire on who? And Sunfire why? Also take a look at the augment here. We have Woodland Charm. So it takes our highest HP champion, it clones them, and the clone has 1800 health. So why do you think Sunfire is the play here rather than Bramblevest? Sunfire Leona, 4 more HP. Okay, so okay, you have another answer. And a bigger front line because of the augments. Okay, so you're correct. So it should be Sunfire here on Leona, but for a different reason. So Sunfire, although technically it is a defensive item, it is slightly more offensive because it does damage and it applies a burn for healing reduction. So you don't really make Sunfire Cape for the HP, you make Sunfire Cape more for the damage, so it doesn't really give you a bigger front line. The reason why you do Sunfire instead of Bramble here is because you actually don't need any more front line. Because of this Woodland Charm augment, which is prismatic, you'll get another Leona that has 1800 health. So that Leona is even tankier than this first Leona. So you essentially have a strong enough front line, and your front line is going to survive for a very long time. You just want to slam the Sunfire, and that way you can start getting some damage going because this board is lacking damage. So you're right, it is Sunfire, just for different reasons. Okay, so let's move on, and we're going to be talking about some natural items now. So before we get into this, does anyone know what a natural item is? I'll give you a hint. The opposite of a natural item is a carousel item. Items from Drakes and stuff? Yeah, so it's items from monster rounds. So natural items are items that you'll obtain from monster rounds. You'll get between 8 and 10 of these components from stage 1 to stage 5. So the first one being minions and the last one being raptors. Normally you get around 10 item components. And the cool thing about this is you'll get a maximum of 1 unique item component per monster round. So let's say you're going to minion round, right? It's 1-2 to 1-4. You'll only be able to get 1 tier, or 1 cloak, or 1 bow. You'll never get dropped like 2 tiers, or you'll never get dropped 2 cloaks, because you only can get 1 item component, 1 unique one per monster round. Okay, before we we'll talk about the marbles in a bag analogy. So here is how items work in TFT. So imagine your item components are marbles in a bag, okay? If a bow or a marble is taken from this bag, now you have a lower % chance of getting another bow. So let's say that all item components, there's an equal amount of item components or marbles in this bag, right? You have a bag, you have 2 bows, you have 2 cloaks, you have 2 tiers, 2 everything. Is that between all players or just you? This is just you. So this is just for an individual player. Okay? So like 2 bows, 2 tiers, 2 cloaks, 2 chains, everything in 1 bag. If 1 bow marble is taken out, if you reach for another one, you have a lower % chance of picking another bow. Okay? So what this all means is in a monster round, let's say on Krugs, right? On Krugs, if you're dropped a bow, the next monster round, you'll have a lower % chance of getting another bow and a higher % chance of getting a different item, because there are good odds of getting at least one of each item component throughout your game. So what does this mean? Okay, so like I said, let's say we're on Krugs, right? We get dropped a tier on Krugs and like a chain. That means in your next round, you'll have a lower % chance of getting a tier and a chain. So that means on Carousel, if you do need a tier or a chain or another one, you should go for that, because you've already gotten those 2 components, and your next Monster Round, you'll have a lower percent chance of getting those same components. So it's just like marbles in a bag. You take out a marble, that marble, like that type of marble, you'll have a lower percent chance of picking the same one. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. If anyone has any questions, I could try to explain it. But that is what natural items are. Then items from Carousel. So these do not contribute to the 8 to 10 components from Monster Rounds. So you'll most likely be having 14 components by the end of the game, and these do not count as marbles. So these are like exterior, they're its own category, and you can get as many of these as you want, and they won't affect your item chances or your marbles in a bag. This is very different. Okay, so that's what natural items are, and we have an example here. So like I said, let's say you're upcoming Krugs, okay, and you haven't naturaled a sword yet, which means you haven't gotten a sword from a natural source or a monster round, but you have naturaled a tier. This means you have a higher chance of getting a sword from wolves and a lower chance of getting a tier, just because like a tier marble has already been taken out from this bag. So that means when you reach back in, there's already going to be less tier marbles in there, and you'll have a lower chance of getting a tier from that bag. Okay, let us continue to the next topic. So how augments and units can influence items. Okay, augments and units influencing items. So we have a couple augment choices here. We have Weak Spot, Sunfire Board, and Vernon Veil. Essentially, if you choose these augments, this will influence your items and your board, and you don't have to build certain things. So if you take Weak Spot, right, your units will ignore a percentage of armor and deal, or not deal, but inflict a healing reduction. So if you get this, you don't need Last Whisper. You don't even really need Morello or Sunfire Cape either if you pick Weak Spot. If you take Sunfire Board as an augment, so all enemy units will get burned for 10 seconds, both damage and healing reduction, then you don't need Morello or Sunfire Cape. And the last example here is Vernon Veil. So Vernon Veil is a prismatic. For 15 seconds, all of your units are CC immune. That means you don't need CC immune items. You don't need Quicksilver, you don't need Banshee's Claw. And the thing with this is you no longer have to position for Blitzcrank hooks, which a lot of people forget because it has become so second nature. So this is just an example of how some augments can influence your items, your item choices, because you don't need to double up on the same effects. Okay, let us continue here. Alright, so let's get into some practice now. So, some practice. Scenario number 1. I just want a couple examples or opinions here. What stats go well together? Either they're multiplicative or they synergize. So on the left, I have a ton of stats within TFT. I have health, attack speed, attack damage, ability power. I want you to try to pair up some stats and then explain if they're multiplicative, if they synergize, if they're both, and why. And then just some example items on the right. You could choose some more. Okay, crit damage and crit chance synergize. Yes, you're right. So crit damage and crit chance. Crit chance increases your chance of critting, and your crit damage, well, it gives you more damage on your crits. So they work well together. Yeah, it seems pretty simple, right? But this is just breaking down like the theory behind the statistics. The more chances you have to crit, the more you'll crit. And the more damage that your crits do, the more damage your crits will do. Ability power and regen. Yes, mana regen. So you have a lot of ability power. That means you really want to cast, and then then the mana regen helps you cast. So synergize and are multiplicative. I would say these synergize more instead of multiplicative. Multiplicative is more like, it's more like numerically, so like health and armor would be multiplicative, just because like if you're building 1000 HP and then you get like 80 armor or 100 armor, that 1000 HP becomes like more because you're able to tank more. So it is a little bit multiplicative between ability power and mana regen in the sense where it's like, I have a ton of damage through ability power, and this mana regen helps make this ability power like like go to use, but it doesn't increase the ability power damage. That's why it's more synergetic. They synergize more instead of like the stats multiply together. So that's why ability power and mana regen to be more synergized and not multiplicative. Just because they don't increase the numbers on either one. They just help them happen. Okay, so thanks saying. We'll move on to scenario 2 here. Okay, so scenario 2. This is another 2-1 example. Okay, this one's a little bit trickier though, because now I have a collector on the bench from Portable Forge. So what would you make from your stage 2 items here? Oh, and why? Maybe Thornmail or like Bramble Vest? Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about units as well. So you think you would make Bramble Vest. Who would you place this on? Who would you place the collector on? And what would you do with this belt then? So you need to be thinking about all 3 of these things and whether or not to place all 3 on one unit or to mix them up. And remember, you also have scrap, which takes one item component and it transforms it into a random full item once the round starts. So I'll give you one more chance to answer, and then I'll give the correct answer unless you say it here. Bramble and Camille, stick the belt on Blitz and give the collector to Ezreal. So you have the item effect or like the item stats like well combined with the unit type. So for example, Camille's like a tank, right? So you put a tank item on a tank, that's good. You stick the belt on Blitz. Okay, Blitz has a scrap and a tank. Good. That will maybe transform into a Sunfire or a Warmogs. Okay, collector. Ezreal is a 80 carry damage. Perfect. However, remember, we want to stack our units. So the correct play to do here is actually to make Sunfire Cape on Gnar. And Gnar is actually our carry here, because Gnar 3 cost unit is going to be stronger than Ezreal 1 cost unit. Gnar does damage, and Gnar is on the Socialite Hex. So you want to put the collector on Gnar. You want to put a Sunfire Cape on Gnar as well. And then you're going to scrap this chain on the Blitzcrank. So now your Gnar is super strong. Collector, you get 1 bonus gold, 60% chance for 1 bonus gold whenever it kills a unit. So the collector will do more damage. It'll help Gnar kill more units. Gnar already does damage, and he's on the Socialite Hex. And then the Sunfire Cape on Gnar also procs collector. So whoever dies from Sunfire Cape, they might also drop a gold as well. So just whenever you're placing items, you want to make sure that, okay, if I have a strong unit, I want to stack all my items on there and make the strong unit stronger. Okay, let's keep going. All right, so this is the same example, but it's further in. So the question here is, what item would you take on Carousel? So we haven't gone through this example yet, but it's very important because Carousel happens. I'll make this a little bit higher quality, 720 as high as it goes. So you see, I've slammed this Sunfire and this collector on Gnar. I have won the past 3 rounds because this is super strong, and I've scrapped this chain onto Blitzcrank. Okay, so going into Carousel, you have Sunfire Cape, you have collector, and you have a chain on Blitzcrank. You know, I'm going to be the last pick here just because I'm win streaking at 100. So realistically, I should just fast forward to the last available options, and I'll pause it right before. Okay, so the last 2 are picking. Okay, so it's kind of hard to see, but we have a cloak, we have a cloak, we have a bow, we have a rod, and we have a chain. So remember, right now going into this, our only item component is a chain on Blitzcrank. Okay, so what do we want to do here? And remember that your Gnar has a collector on it and a Sunfire Cape. So your Gnar is really strong, but it only has 2 items. So I think, do we want to make a 3rd item on Gnar and just sell the Blitzcrank? What do we want to do here? And remember everything that we've talked about so far, making strong units stronger, what general items are good to slam early, so like Warmogs, Bramble Vest, Sunfire Cape, and we have Cloak, Bow, Rod, and Chain. This one's tough. This one's tough, I'll give you that. What level is the Blitz on your board? The Blitz is a Blitz 1. So this is your board. You have Camille, you have Yordleson, you have a strong Gnar, and you have a Chain Vest scrapped on your Blitz. So this is a better representation. This is your board, and your options are Bow, Cloak, Chain, and Rod. I want to say Bow, so you can make Titan's Resolve for the Gnar, but I really don't know. Okay. So, that is a good idea. Okay, so I'll show you what actually happens. So, you're right, Zengis. A Bow would have been great here. I would have loved to take in the Bow and make Titan Resolve on Gnar. So you said the correct answer. Great job. This would make Gnar really strong. Technically he goes range to melee, but he will survive long enough because he has a lot of HP. He also has some items on him. So the Titan Resolve is the correct play. Because it got taken from me, I end up taking the chain, and then here I can sell the Blitzcrank and make a Bramble Vest on the Gnar. So you're correct. The Titan Resolve is better just because I wasn't able to get it. This is the second best option. And now I have a really strong Gnar, and whatever he kills has a chance of dropping extra gold. And this is the best scenario to go about. Okay, I think we have one last scenario here. So Zhang, or anyone else who wants to participate, we will take a look at our items here. And what would you do with your items here? So you have a tier, you have a chain, and you have a belt. Your augment is weak spot, which allows you to ignore % of enemy armor and applies healing debuff. And your units right now are Talon Pair, Alawi, and Illusion. But you could sell this Illusion, pick up any unit you want in the shop, and yeah. So looking at this, you're already leaning towards playing AD. Okay, you're looking to play an AD comp because you have weak spot. So take a look at these items and think what item component is not ideal for AD, and then how can I finish that item component, or how can I kill that item component so then I make an optimal item for an AD comp, and then I can get rid of it. If we want to get rid of the tier, then I guess Frozen Heart. Yeah, you're 100% correct. Great job. So, oh, sorry. You're 100%. I create the Frozen Heart on Talon. Because we're playing AD, this tier is not very beneficial for us because tier mostly goes into AP comps. So by creating this Frozen Heart, we use the tier, and now we don't have to worry about this lone tier anymore, and we can start making AD items. Sunfire Cape is also a really good starting item. However, then we're just left with one tier. And if we don't get a chain on the next carousel, then we're just stuck with this tier. So great job. Good answer there, Zhang. That's definitely what I went for. Now we have a little bit of time for Q&A, so if you have any questions, this would be the time to ask. And if not, then Renox, if you're here, we're going to get saying to fill out the feedback form for this masterclass. I will also get a link going, and then we have 15 minutes until our next VOD review. So take a drink of water if you don't have anything to ask, and then we'll see you then. So. Okay, I see you're typing. Would you ever just save the tier? Okay, so let's take a look. So in this position, let's say we make Sunfire Cape, right? Okay, if we have weak spot, we're most likely, we're playing an AD comp for sure, okay? So that means that we're playing either Sivir, we're playing Jhin, we're playing maybe even Jinx, we're playing Zeri's in the middle. So we're playing an AD comp. Irelia is not good anymore. So let's say we slam the Sunfire Cape here, right? And then we have another tier. On Carousel, if we don't get a chain for Frozen Heart, then our only other options are like Static Shiv, Archangels, Blue Buff, Chalice, and Hodge. So Hodge and Frozen Heart are good, but that is not guaranteed. We're not guaranteed the item component to make a Hodge and a chain. And since there are less good options than there are more bad options, we're most likely going to get a bad option for this combination with tier. And worst case scenario, let's say we win, right? And we have last pick, and our last options are like tier, rod, and cloak. Then we're kind of screwed because we can't make a slammable item. And now we have two tiers, or like a tier and a cloak, that we can't really do anything with us. And now we have two dead components. So it's more stable and less risky to just like slam this tier and go ahead and get rid of it, not have to worry about it, and still make a good item, as opposed to make like an equally good item and then have to like worry about like hopefully we're able to get something to like finish off this tier. And also, since we have an assassin, Frozen Heart is really good on assassins, and it will just slow the entire backline here, their attack speed. So yeah, that's answering your question. So I would say no, and I think the consequences outweigh the benefits for if we save the tier. Okay, so hopefully that answers your question. If you have any other questions, then once again, feel free to type it here. And if you don't have anything, then we're going to take like a 10-minute break. We'll be back for the VOD review in 12 minutes, and I'll see everyone then. So thank you for attending. In a couple of minutes, I'll hop into the VOD review chat, and I will share my screen there, and I'll see you then.